Hello everyone, welcome back. And this week it's Donnie Darko 2001. There's some young fresh faces in there, Nathan, there.
Yes, there are.
And Jake Gyllenhaal, he looks young in it. Not as young as he did. He's the son in City Slickers. Do you remember City Slickers?
Christ, yeah, I do remember that.
But yeah, I watched City Slickers about 7-8 months ago and I was like, oh fuck, it's Jake Gyllenhaal. I can't believe it's 2001.
It's mental, isn't it?
It does seem such a long time ago now, doesn't it?
But it hasn't lost anything over 20 years.
No.
It's as good today as it was when I first watched it.
I mean, at the time when it came out, it knocked me for six, I think. I've become a bit obsessed with it. I loved films where you was like, what the hell's going on here?
I mean, it sort of had a real, and still does have a real strong cult following, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, Donnie Darko cost £4 million to make, and it only made $500,000 on its initial box office release, but it became this massive cult classic that made $10 million on DVD sales.
Yeah.
And Jake Gyllenhaal, he does a great job in this film, carrying the movie, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's perfect.
From the director's commentary of this, I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal sits in with the writer-director Richard Kelly, and they seem to get on really, really well, you know?
Right, yeah.
This film goes into some quite strange theory about time and about predestination. And like, he's got the cylinders that come out and lead you. The director, Richard Kelly, was watching American football, NFL.
Yeah.
And when he got the idea for that, they show the players with like arrows coming out of their chests in the replays where they're going to go. And he's like, oh, what if that's what predestination was? And you saw an arrow and you had to follow it.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, the effects in this, they're not bad, are they? They do their job.
Yeah, they're everything.
Accept it.
Everything they needed to be. Like you say, they do their job, but they don't detract from the film in any way. But I love the scene between Jake Gyllenhaal and the science teacher.
Noah Weil. He used to be in ER, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yes, that's where I recognise him from.
Yeah.
But I love the scene in the school lab where they're discussing predestination and fate and the consequences of being able to see the path to your destination, which would then give you the opportunity to
break,
deviate, which then destroys the whole theory of fate anyway, which are just brilliant. It just, the film blows your mind in so many different ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It really
great.
Gets you thinking outside the box, and it twists your brain up in little knots, sort of unties it nicely at the end, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of.
The thing is with this film, it's the characters are so great throughout it, aren't they? Seth Rogan is in there, isn't he?
Yeah, oh my
As
God.
the bully.
Yeah, I only recognised him towards the end.
It was Patrick Swayze as well in it. What a great performance from him as life coach Jim Cunningham.
Oh God, yeah. The videos that they'd made of him to show in the school.
The infomercials.
Oh, they were just brilliant, weren't they?
Fear, love. I'm not afraid anymore.
This kid's fear is wet in his bed at 11 years old or something. What kid in their right mind would agree to be in that?
Yeah, he's the same kid who turns up at the school.
Yeah.
And says his bit, which suggests that it's all a con, it's all a rig, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all staged. Like,
you know, he's a plant in the audience to come out and get things moving.
And I love the scene as well when they're at school and Donnie Darko's got to go up and read his card and then put a cross on the fear love line to determine where it should be, and he challenges the teacher. What actress was the teacher? Is it Beth Grant?
Yeah, Beth Grant as Miss Farmer. She is great in it.
Yeah,
she?
You just, oh my God, you hate her.
She is horrible, isn't she?
Just so brainwashed.
Yeah, she just can't see the wrong in Jim Cunningham, can she? She's completely...
She is the root of like so many stereotypes that we come to sort of think of these brainwashed religious types, isn't she?
Yeah. But she's also like exploitative of the children, you know, making them do that dance, and she's the one pushing it. And with Drew Barrymore, you can obviously see she's disgusted by it when she's watching it.
What was the dance group called again? The dance troupe called, was it Sparkle Motion or something?
Sparkle Motion, yeah. But yeah, you were saying about when he challenges her And he like just about to say something, and then it cuts to the office, and the parents are in there, and they're like, "What did you say to her?" And then she said, "He told me to forcibly insert that book into my anus." And then the dad like
It just laughs.
snickers, doesn't he? They've got her summed up, haven't they? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, his parents are great, aren't they? There is a good family dynamic there, isn't it? And they all sit around the table and discussing politics with young Maggie Gyllenhaal as well.
Yep.
But yeah, her and Donnie, obviously, Jake and Maggie, real brother and sister. So it brings a real authenticity to the table when they're having the discussion.
It's so real. And we've all been there around a dinner table with siblings having arguments where it's you're not going to be the one to give in, you know, you're not going to back down, and it's just a stupid nonsense argument that means nothing.
Yeah, and the little daughter's going, what's a fuck ass?
And then the dad starts laughing.
Yeah.
But this film, mate, there's no point tiptoeing around it. We're going to have to dive into the plot at some point.
Yeah.
So the digging that I done, I found 3 general concepts.
Yeah.
One of them is the split alternate universe theory.
Yeah.
Where at 12 o'clock on the 2nd of October 1988, there's a split, and then Donnie Darko goes into an alternate universe, which can only exist for a limited amount of time.
Uh-huh.
And he's sort of navigated through it by Frank, that sort of get him to a point where he's able to come to the conclusion that reunites the split, if you like.
That's it, yeah.
And then travels back to the initial point. And then there's another one that it's like all in his head because he's schizophrenic.
Yeah.
And then there's another one which is like he's like this Christ figure.
Right.
But I guess they can all sort of coexist.
Yeah, I think
apart
from...
Well, I guess the schizophrenia one doesn't really tie in if you go with the alternate universe one, maybe.
Well, I think the schizophrenia is suggested, isn't it? You know, he's at the psychiatrist's.
Yeah.
Everyone else would be thinking that he's schizophrenic because he's hearing voices and he's talking to a life-size rabbit. But the director does actually go on to say that Donnie Darko is not sick.
Yeah.
It's not in his head. It's not a figment of his imagination. It's not a dream. It all happens. He said the name Donnie Darko, I mean, Gretchen says it in the film, sounds like a superhero. Yeah. And he says, who's to say I'm not? And Richard Kelly says, you know, he is a superhero. He's here to save the world. He's chosen to realign, as you say, the alternative universe.
Yeah.
By stealing the jet engine off of his mother's plane. But in order for that to happen, everything has to be lined up, and all these people that he meets throughout the film, it's all set up perfectly for him to get to that end point. Everything he does affects everything they do as well. His mum has to go on the plane because he needed her on the plane. So that's why he burnt down the house of Jim Cunningham. So Jim Cunningham is arrested, and then Miss Farmer is unavailable to take the children.
Did his mum didn't have to be on the plane as such, but she just had to be away so that they could have the party?
Well, she did have to be on the plane. Well, this is what the director was saying. She had to be there, so that's his connection to that plane, I think.
Right, okay, I'm with you.
Through her.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, the party was happening as well. That was his suggestion.
Yeah, because if the party wasn't there, Frank wouldn't have been at the party and then gone to go and get beer, which would left the note on the fridge, which then triggered him to go to old Grandma Death's house or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to follow, but apparently in the director's cut, right, saying about him not being ill, apparently in the director's cut, there's a scene where the psychiatrist tells him he can stop taking his medication because it's all a placebo.
Placebos, yeah. But, I mean, the psychiatrist scenes are great, aren't they? She's trying to get things out of him, and he's like, imagine him fucking Christina Applegate out of Married with Children, putting his hand down his trousers, about to take himself out, and then she, like, claps her hands, and he wakes up with his hand down her trousers. And he's like, what? He must be thinking, like, what are you doing to me?
Yeah, it's like hard to believe you're in a safe place when every time you wake up, you're either trying to touch yourself or cradling into this older woman. Not entirely sure I would have agreed to go under the second time.
No. I'd be like setting up hidden cameras somewhere. Make sure Jim Cunningham isn't just hidden behind a curtain somewhere or something.
Yeah, recorded it, yeah.
This was a real change in pace for Patrick Swayze. You know, I think at this point you hadn't seen him in much for a while, had you?
No.
And then to come out and play this like real smarmy character is just fantastic. Discover later on he's a complete fucking pedo.
Yeah.
Whilst Miss Farmer's like covering up for him. And that's the thing, she judges Donnie's mum for her parenting.
Yeah.
And even when she goes round to sort of like say, oh, you know, I'm trying to protect this man's name, even though the evidence is all there and it's clear that he is guilty.
Yeah.
And even then when she's talking to Donnie's mum and saying, you have to go and take the kids, she goes, you were literally the last parent that I would have ever dreamt of asking. You know, she just can't help but
be a condescending old wench.
Yeah. We said earlier about her and Drew Barrymore sort of head to head.
Yeah.
And Drew Barrymore is obviously offended by the exploitative nature of like that dance troupe. And obviously Miss Farmer thinks that what Drew Barrymore is teaching the kids, you know, even though it's a bit of culture, you know, she's like, oh, there's pornography in our schools. And she sees that as something that needs to be addressed. And in the end, Drew Barrymore's the one that sort of ends up having to get knocked out of the school. But it's sort of two things about that. It's Drew Barrymore, you know, obviously she was one of the most exploited child actors, wasn't she? Her story, I don't know if you know it.
No.
Her mum was really like pushy.
Right.
And she was big in E.T. and stuff, you know, and then through the 80s, she was like hooked on drugs at like around the age of 10, which I think she used to just steal from her mum. And
oh, Christ.
She tidied herself up. She won, you know, she came through it. So it's sort of good casting that she's there to play that role. And maybe that's what spoke, because Drew Barrymore was the one who got this film made. She was shown the script by Richard Kelly, and no one else wanted to make it, and she produced it as her production company.
Right.
So it must have been that aspect of it that spoke out to her.
Yeah.
To want to make it, perhaps, amongst other things. I mean, it is a great script. But also, yeah, her character is another character that pushes Darko into a certain direction, isn't she?
Yeah, yeah.
When she says about cellar door, the next time when Donnie Darko goes to see Grandma Death, he delivers the letter and he knows to go looking in her cellar door, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You know? Everything nudges him in the right direction. All these people have a part to play, whether they know it or not. Donnie Darko was, I think Mark Wahlberg was offered the role and he wanted to play it with a lisp. So they was like, nah, we don't want Donnie to have a lisp.
Right.
I don't think anyone could have played it any better than Jake Gyllenhaal, myself.
Nah. I can't imagine anyone else doing it now.
No, he's got that sort of mischievous quality, and when he's put under and when he's talking to Frank, he's almost talking like an infant, isn't he? You know, he's like...
Yeah, yeah.
But he's got that sort of crazed look, that weird smirk.
Yeah, his face is tilted forward as well, and it's very intense look.
Yeah.
It's brilliant, because I, even having seen the film before, I completely forgot that Jim Cunningham, because you're like, oh God, he's burnt that guy's house down. And he's got this brilliant alibi because his girlfriend's fallen asleep in the cinema and he gets back to her before she wakes up, and you think, oh, you know, at least he's got someone that can vouch for him. And then the next day you're like, oh yeah, I completely don't have to worry about it because Jim Cunningham is into child pornography. Yeah.
I mean, they go to the cinema. It says there's a Halloween double bill, and they are watching The Evil Dead, which Sam Raimi gave them the rights to use the film for free, which was nice of him. The other film in that Halloween double bill, did you notice what it was, Nath?
Something of Christ?
Yeah, The Last Temptation of Christ, which is a Martin Scorsese film. So I don't know why that was part of the Halloween double bill. And talking about rights, in this film, they're talking about the Smurfs when they're doing the shooting. And the scene was written where they actually shooting models of Smurfs.
Right.
But to use the Smurf in that scene, they had to get the rights from the creator of the Smurfs. So the director spoke to him and he said, you can only use the Smurf if one of your characters sticks up for the Smurfs and tells the actual story of how Smurf was actually created, right? Sort of corrects them all. So they rewrote the scene for that, But the final irony was that on the day they came to film that, they still hadn't managed to find the Smurf model that they wanted. So they end up shooting cans. But it's actually, again, it cements his character, doesn't it, as rising above all that nonsensical,
yeah,
laddish talk and that, isn't it?
Once I finished watching the film, I was just like, I really wanted to know what was going on, because it feels like when you get to the end of the film, it feels like Donnie Darko's had a realization. There's been a lot of death and destruction has gone on. And I think mainly with his girlfriend, Gretchen Ross, because when she dies in the alternate universe, obviously he's absolutely distraught and gutted. And he's built up all the way through the film as being this compassionate, empathetic guy. And you're like, right.
Yeah.
He's basically come to the conclusion that if he hadn't met her and interfered with her life, she wouldn't be here. And the only way to rectify it is to sort of go back and actually be in the room at the time that the jet engine crashes into it.
Yeah.
That's what you take away after watching the film. But at the time, I just had no idea at face value that it was an alternate universe.
Yeah, I think there's two realities. One sort of alternate universe breaks into his, and it highlights all these wrongs in this little town, doesn't it? And it affects all these different people. The universe is trying to amend everything through Donnie, but he falls in love, him and Gretchen. But in his alternate reality that we're viewing, she has to die. Whereas in order to save her, he has to die. So they're sort of this doomed, tragic relationship. But then the director also says that Frank, when you hear him driving off and he's tooting his horn, because it's Frank is the boyfriend who drops Maggie Gyllenhaal off.
Right.
And she comes in and she collapses against the door when the engine first drops in, doesn't it? And you see all it shaking and that.
Yeah.
But when he drives off, you can hear the horn tooting.
Yeah.
And the director says that is him trying to wake Donnie up to say, get out of the room. You don't have to die.
No way.
Allegedly. But he doesn't. Donnie sort of realises he's put everything right.
Yeah.
Ultimately sacrifices himself in order to do so.
Because he's got a smile on his face when he's accepting his fate,
He's laughing, isn't he? He's laughing manically, isn't he? But then the following morning, it's like they've all experienced that parallel universe, haven't they? Only they don't know if it's real or not, and they all reflect upon what has happened through the film,
Yeah.
And they're all made to think about their own actions, even though they haven't at that point occurred.
It's almost like there's like this ripple effect from the alternate universe that has spread back through time to all of the characters that were involved. And they've got some sort of, like you say, some sort of memory of it, but not really understanding what it is.
But it completely takes you by surprise when Gretchen gets run over. You don't see that, do you?
No.
When you first watch it.
And that's it's such a painful thing, because you're rooting for Donnie all the way through the film. You think that the Gretchen thing is the one thing that he's found, because there's a lot of reference about him not wanting to be alone and not wanting to die alone. And then he finds Gretchen and you just think, this is the thing that's going to help heal whatever mental issues he's struggling with.
Yeah.
And then, to see her run over like that, it's just like, wow. It just breaks whatever you're hoping for. But it tears into this whole new possibility, this trigger, this catalyst for him to come to the final conclusion of what he needs to do. It has to happen, unfortunately. But then the beautiful thing about it is that ultimately he sacrificed himself for her.
Yeah.
For her to live, which is a very noble act. And
they?
The real crowning piece is the wave, isn't it?
Oh, at the end.
Between Gretchen and Rosie Darko. Yeah. It's just like, wow.
It's almost as if Gretchen's like, do I know her? Do I know this family?
Yeah.
And then she waves, and then the little boy waves, and that's the last shot of the film, isn't it? It's a great little... And I mean, that's what I love about it, is that it's an ending that when you first watch it, you're like, what am I working out here?
Yeah.
I love that. I love a film that you have to go away and think about. It's all there for you, isn't it? But it's just how you interpret these images.
Yeah, because ultimately, whether you call it an alternate universe or whatever, Jake Gyllenhaal comes to the conclusion that he needs to reset things by sacrificing himself and give everyone another chance to do better. And that's, you know, that's sort of the walk away from it when you watch it at face value. But when you start diving into it, oh my God, it's a film that just keeps on giving, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I mean, there's loads of foreshadowing throughout the film. From Grandma Death going to the post box, and it's like all her life she's waited for Donnie's letter, which is at the end when she stood in the middle of the road with Donnie's letter in her hand, isn't she?
Yeah.
When Donnie tells Gretchen that he burnt a house down, he stood right outside of Jim Cunningham's house, which he will go on to burn down.
Yeah.
And again, like another bit of foreshadowing is when Donnie isn't his card to do with finding someone's wallet and handing it in, and then he finds again Jim Cunningham's wallet, doesn't he? There's all little things like that sort of suggest stuff, and then sort of make more sense later on.
It's a film that you definitely have to watch several times to get the full value out of it. And even after 3, 4, maybe 5 watches, I still feel like I could go through it, and even having watched some of the reviews of the theories behind the storyline, I think I could still go through and watch it again and still enjoy it and take more out of it, you know?
Yeah, definitely good.